Let's walk through how to properly set up a Dataform repository and workspace, the foundation for building modular pipelines inside BigQuery Studio. We'll also cover best practices for initializing your environment, updating config files, and preparing the datasets you'll need. In Dataform, a repository is the main container where your entire analytics project lives. Think of it like your GitHub repo. It holds all your SQLX models, includes declarations, and configuration files. All code lives here. It's your single source of truth for how the pipeline is built and deployed. And this is especially important in enterprise settings. Instead of people saving queries to their own folders, you get one centralized, version-controlled system that supports collaboration. From the Google Cloud Console, go to BigQuery, then Dataform. Click the Create Repository button. Now choose an appropriate name for your repo, all lowercase, no spaces, and use underscores if needed. Something like Marketing Repositories or Luminova Tutorials. Select the region that matches your BigQuery datasets. This is important. If your datasets are in EU, select Europe Central 2. Leave the service account and permissions settings as default. Hit Create, and you're done. You now have a repo ready to go. Now that your repository exists, it's time to create a workspace. A workspace is like your own development branch inside the repo. Each analyst should have their own workspace. Name something like John Analyst _1, so they can build and test independently. This lets multiple people work in parallel without overwriting each other's changes. Click Create Development Workspace, enter a workspace ID, and hit Create. You'll now be taken to the code editor, but first, you need to initialize it. Click Initialize Workspace. This creates a default set of files for you, including 2 example SQLX models, a workflow settings YAML file, and a basic project structure with definitions and includes. Now let's go over the file structure briefly. Definitions is where you put all your SQLX models. Includes can be used to store shared JavaScript logic. Gitignore tells the repo what not to commit. Workflow settings YAML is where you define global settings for your pipeline. Let's open up the workflow settings YAML file. This is a critical step. You need to make sure the settings in this file match your actual GCP setup. Update the default project to your project ID. Default location to match the region you selected earlier, like EU or US. Default dataset to the name of the BigQuery dataset where your outputs should be stored. And optionally, set default assertion dataset for where your assertion checks will go. Save the file. Before running anything, we need to create the BigQuery dataset where Dataform will write its output. Go to BigQuery, open your project, and create a new dataset. Use the same name you just set in the YAML. This is where all tables, views, and materialized results from this repo will land. Once that's done, go back to Dataform and commit your changes. At this stage, we haven't yet connected a GitHub repo, and that's fine. You can develop locally inside BigQuery Studio. But in production settings, it's recommended to sync this repo with GitHub for proper version control, pull requests, and collaboration. We'll cover that in a future lesson. To recap, you've created a centralized repository, set up a personal workspace, initialized your file structure, configured your environment with YAML, and created the BigQuery dataset where your pipeline will land. You're now ready to start building models. Let's move forward.